And then later, those connections that we were able to build with Charité Hospital helped us to save Navalny. Rest in power. And I'll give the microphone to Lucy.
If you could just introduce yourself. I mean, Lucy Stein, I know you're another member of Pussy Riot, if you want to just deliver a few remarks, because I know you have to leave to attend this next event. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Lucy Stein. I'm a member of Pussy Riot, and I also work in the North Caucasus SIS crisis group. We evacuate LGBTQ plus people from North Caucasus. Maybe you heard about Chechen Republic, where LGBT people are facing mortal danger. And today I actually don't know what to say, because it was a shock, the news about Navalny, and we all don't know what to do now. But if you watch Navalny documentary film, he was he told that in case if he dies, we shouldn't give up. So we're not going to give up.
Thank you very much. Nadia and Lucy, again, because I know you have to go, I'm just going to, if you're going to be leaving in just 4 minutes, maybe you can share with us some of your, what you see as Alexei Navalny's legacy. Not give up. That message comes through very strongly in that film you just mentioned. But do you think that he will inspire others, also in death, to continue the struggle for what he was standing up for?
I think he does inspire millions of people, and he's bigger than the country where he started from. And we've heard, I just read today that Bono was chanting Navalny's name at his concert in Las Vegas, and I feel like Navalny inspires people all over the world. It will be difficult for the Russian opposition to recover after all that happened. The war, Navalny's death, it will be incredibly difficult, because obviously Navalny was a great unifying figure, and no matter if people liked him or hated him, he was a guiding star, and people were formulating their own positions based on Navalny's activity and his existence.
Lucy, anything to add on that? Maybe I can ask you then point blank then, in terms of how Navalny operated. He had different phases during his active life when he mobilized people around the country in different ways, and he was of course a very charismatic individual and tenacious, and continued to fight for what he was doing. But is there one thing that he did that maybe you can imagine emulating in his career? If there was something that he has done that you would imagine yourself or others doing moving forward that had some impact?
We did it already. It's not a widely known fact, but Pussy Riot was started partly because of Navalny. He inspired me with his speech in 2011 when Putin announced that he's going to be the president of Russia once again. I looked at Navalny. I was very inspired by his effective and very professional approach, and I felt like it's important to give people a set of tools that it can use and quite easily reproduce. So we come up with Pussy Riot, which is very replicable and reproducible. Anyone can be Pussy Riot. You can put on a mask and make an action in front of the Russian embassy. And in that sense, we are being influenced by Navalny since the very first day that Pussy Riot were born.
Very good. I'm going to let you get out of here on time unless you have something more to add. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for the founding member of Pussy Riot and one of the current members of Pussy Riot. On my immediate left here, Lucy Stein and Nadia Tolokonikova. I hope I'm getting your name right. Anyway, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Feel free to stick around if you can, but I know you gotta go. Great. Then I am going to move to the table there so that I can rest my legs and we can listen. Thank you again. So as you all know, as you may know, this event was supposed to take place tomorrow, and it was moved at very short notice to this time to give it, to make it more accessible, I believe, it being a Sunday. I just want to thank you all for coming out on this Sunday in Berlin for this, and I want to thank the organizers, which I haven't had a chance to do, of the World Forum and the Cinema for Peace for making this possible. Of course, if you're not aware, Cinema for Peace played an extremely important role in Alexei Navalny's life. It was Cinema for Peace that organized his transport to Germany 3.5 years ago when he was poisoned, and got him into a hospital here in Berlin and managed to revive him, and much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of Russian President Vladimir Putin. And remarkably, Alexei Navalny after he recovered, chose to return to Russia, knowing what fate he might meet. And it's an extraordinary story, and I hope we will have some more reflections on that as we proceed. At this point, I'm going to turn the floor over to Nathan Law for our second keynote. He's a mainland Chinese-born activist, politician from Hong Kong, needs no introduction, really. Living in exile, I believe, at the moment. Are you still in London? Or are you? Yeah. And yeah, Nathan, the floor is yours.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction, Terry, and also thank you so much for the organizers and panelists for coming for today's event. My name is Nathan. I'm originally from Hong Kong. I used to be a legislator there. I was elected at the age of 23, the youngest in history. But later on, because of my peaceful advocacy for human rights and democracy in the region, I was jailed, and then I had to leave Hong Kong. For now, I'm wanted by the Hong Kong government with multiple charges and also a bounty worth £100,000 on my head. So this is a reflection of the latest development of the political situation in Hong Kong. It's getting worse and worse, and people like me, like Joshua Wong, and many of the fellows who I've been working for more than a decade, they ended up in jail, just like everyone else. We've just heard breaking news, and I think every one of us in this room are really shocked and saddened by the death and indeed a murder of Alexei Navalny. I remember a few years back when he was being treated in Berlin. I was also in Berlin for another forum. That was the time when I was just got out from Hong Kong and just granted asylum status in the UK. And that kind of situation is faced by so many people like him, like me, and everyone else that on the pathway of fighting for democracy and freedom is always full of dangers, is always full of threats. And not only for you, but also for your family, as many of my families are also being harassed in Hong Kong, just like many of the other activists around the world. In the past few years, we all saw from news that Navalny has suffered from arbitrary detention, deprivation of sleep, deprivation of medical help, and also solitary confinement in jail, and definitely the attempt of murders that we've all known very familiarly. And the death of him really made a lot of us to rethink what's the cost of activism, to reflect about our journeys that we've been through, and also the situation that human rights defenders are facing in all these authoritarian or dictatorial regimes. And it really also reminds me of the story of Liu Xiaobo. I'm not sure whether you know of him. He is the only Chinese laureate of Nobel Peace Prize. He got it in 2010. And he was my political enlightenment. So I grew up in a very apolitical blue-collar family. My parents' teaching has always been stay away from politics because it's not something ordinary people should be involved. And they also know it very well. It is really dangerous to be involved in politics in China and Hong Kong because they escaped from China because of these political and economic turmoil. Nonetheless, I was getting interested in activism when I was in high school. I also studied in a high school that's really pro-Beijing. So every day my teachings was how we should be very obedient to the regime and to your families and to anyone who are superior than you. So all my backgrounds are in favor to my participation of activism. It was until that I learned the story of Liu Xiaobo and also the Tiananmen Massacre in 1989 that I decided to be involved in activism because I believe younger generations are the spearhead of the change of society and we share the responsibility to the enhancement of our community. Fast forward, the death of Liu Xiaobo, I vividly remember when it took place. It took place on 30th July 2017 because that was the day that was my birthday. I happened to be born on the same day that in 1993 that Liu Xiaobo died in 2017. So since after, I never celebrated my birthday on that day. From the case of Liu Xiaobo and Navalny, we witnessed the utmost example of courage of activists, which they're willing to fully commit and sacrifice for the ideals and values that they care about the most. And this is a reflection of the struggles that we're having, even though for me, I am living in exile, and for many other activists, they're living in different conditions. But nonetheless, we commit part of ourselves into these long struggles of freedoms and democracy. And we all know that the fight for democracy is a marathon. It's something that we have to keep doing it. And just like Liu Xiaobo, Navalny's, what he's done and his tragic death would definitely inspire generations of activists and fellow citizens to take the torch and to march on. So we've just heard one phrase from the video that Navalny was featured. He was asked what he wanted to say to his supporters in the event of his death. Other than do not give up, he also said that the regime did that because we are extremely strong. Our ideals penetrate borders, transport across culture, and unite us together. So apart from being shocked, being saddened, we also have to feel empowered by the events unfold these years and in these few days, because we are strong and we will, of course, follow the torch and we will not give up. Thank you so much.
Nathan, thank you, thank you. I'm going to introduce our speakers as they begin, rather than go through the whole list here. But we'll start directly next to me, because we do have this huge panel, and I'm hoping that everyone will respect the time constraints that we're facing so we don't go too badly over time. I'm going to introduce the two people next to me, because I think you travel quite a bit as a pair, and you're maybe here representing the same institution. Leyla Yunus is an Azerbaijani human rights activist who serves as a director of the Institute of Peace and Democracy. That's a human rights organization. I guess now it's based outside of Azerbaijan. Yeah, maybe we'll hear more about that, because after spending some time in jail, I think you did leave. Both you and Dr. Arif Yunusov is head of the Department of Conflict and Migration at the Institute. of Peace and Democracy, same organization. I'm going to give the floor to both of you together, and you can do some division of labor with your remarks this afternoon. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, my human rights work began in Soviet Union. In 1981, I was working at the Russian Foreign Policy Archive in Moscow. One day, one of my colleagues from other Soviet republic asked me, "Will you sign the appeal for return of crime Tatars to crime?" I replied, "Of course I will." Soon I became a member of the underground movement of national minorities against communist regime. For me, it was a great experience. My teachers was wonderful people who spent in Gulag in Siberia 20-25 years. Soviet dissidents. We met secretly in the forest of Ukraine and Baltic states. I was one of the young on these meetings. One of them, Estonian dissident, Mart Niklus, he was sentenced a long time in prison because he was against Olympic Games in Soviet Union in 1980, because Soviet Union was the country of the communist dictatorship. Later, and he was arrested for a long period. Later, in 2014, in July, I repeat Mart Niklus' experience and published my appeal against first European Olympic Games in Azerbaijan as dictatorship country. There were many political prisoners, and immediately, the next day, I was arrested together with my husband, Arif, as Armenian spies. When in 1991 the Soviet Union collapsed, we believed that we will live in democratic state. Soviet Union collapsed. But in 1993, in Azerbaijan to the power came Heydar Aliyev, former KGB general, leader of Communist Party. And in 2003, he was succeeded by his son Ilham Aliyev. In Soviet time, it was not need to explain to the Soviet what is the Soviet Union, that is totalitarian regime, what is this horrible state. All world knew very well what is the Soviet Union. But now, it's very difficult for us, dissidents from former Soviet Union, to explain that we live in dictatorship country. Belarusians, Russians, everyone understand who is Lukashenko, who is Putin. But it's very difficult for us in Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan has oil and gas. And these factors play a very negative role for our people. Ilham Aliyev by European and American politicians, and he is very welcome as a Democrat in Europe and in the United States.
I'm sorry to interrupt at this point. It's just that, again, out of respect for time, because we have such a large panel, I'm concerned that the other panelists will not have an opportunity to speak, and it's really important that we all do. So if you could perhaps maybe conclude.
I will conclude. I thought that it was very difficult to be dissidents in such country. We stay in prison 2 years, and it was great support of European Union, solidarity that we did not die in prison. Then, after be freedom, we cannot stay in Azerbaijan because after tortures we need support of medical support, but in Azerbaijan they refused. The doctors refused to meet us as the enemy of the nation. And from 2016 we live in Netherlands, where we created Institute for Peace and Democracy, which is regularly busy with political prisoners, tortures. Today in Azerbaijan, 254 political prisoners. And we continued our work.
Very good, thank you. Dr. Arif Yunusov, feel free to depart from your script and extemporize, because it may enrich the conversation. And if you care to reflect perhaps yourself on the role or on the legacy of Alexei Navalny, because this is partly a commemoration event in honor of him. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, hi everybody. And of course, first time after the invitation, I would like to say about the problem of the human rights defender who lived abroad here. But then I heard, like everyone, this terrible news about Alexei Navalny. For us, Navalny is not a famous Russian politician. For us, we knew him very well. For a long time, we met in Moscow in many events or action rallies. We have many common friends. And when Navalny also, he was treated here in Berlin, I know, in 2020, in famous Charité clinic where Leila and I were treated in 2016. Yes, sometimes I think maybe same doctors help us and Alexei Navalny were also in prison. And when Navalny decided to return, I spoke with one of common friend, famous Soviet and now Russia dissident Alexander Podrobinik, and after the discussion we agreed that Navalny would be in prison maximum 3 years, because we know what is it to be imprisoned in dictatorial country. Sometimes many people, first of all here in the West, in Europe, don't understand what is it life condition of the dissident in dictatorial countries. They don't understand what has been our life. For example, when a young Azerbaijani in my country tell us that they want to become human defenders, first of all, I say, you should know that one day you will be arrested. It's our reality of activity of dissident, of human rights, first of all, human rights defenders in a country like Russia, Belarus, Azerbaijan, same system. I was arrested in 2014 and during 16 months was in solitary confinement of the former Soviet KGB. The same system was in the main part of the former Soviet Republic. Change only name. First secretary, leader of the first secretary of Communist Party, today is the president. Against the big role of the security, against this totalitarian propaganda, and again, if you forget it's a reality for human defenders in like country. One day we were arrested.
May I ask you a question at this point? Because I know that both of you have suffered for your activism as dissidents in Azerbaijan. You now live in exile in the Netherlands, as others here at this table live in exile. What gave you courage to do what you did that got you in jail? And how can you keep that courage alive now? and then we'll move on.
Many times ask when we discuss, sometimes our friends ask, you have many risks. You are not politics. You don't need a good position in government and so on. Against you, army, security of dictators who have huge money, but our weapon, only our words and face. And before his death, Navalny said, if they decided to kill me, you are not allowed to give up. We must not surrender to dictators. Our struggles continue. We believe our victory. And I think that if we say about the role of Navalny, we remember him. Navalny's best memory is to help today Ukraine. Ukraine victory will be our common victory. In Soviet time, as Leila said, we dissident, because why we say about the Soviet time, because first time I was arrested in 1976, Soviet KGB, I know very well.
Right, extraordinary.
Independent after the collapse time, that's my second arrest. So, and we, in Soviet time, the dissidents always say, for our and your freedom. But now, today, we must say, for victory of Ukraine and our victory, for our common freedom.
Thank you very much. We also have with us Mary Lawler. She's the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders. And the floor is yours.
How many minutes are going to set my timer?
Well, I would love to say, okay, everyone now, if we are going to be given the extra 15 minutes we lost at the beginning, we would have 25 minutes for the rest of it. And that would, you can do the math on that yourself, it doesn't add up to much. So, but please, please continue. Perhaps we can go over time as well. Yeah.
Okay, so I am the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders. So I'm only speaking from the position of human rights defenders. My focus is on them and not dissidents, because there can be a difference between dissidents and human rights defenders. My friends here, whom I know for at least probably 20 years at this stage, are human rights defenders whose case I took up when I was in a previous life. Liu Xiaobo, a great hero of mine. I made a little documentary about him. His speech from the doc to his wife, maybe you've seen it. It was all the other Nobel Prize winners who read parts of his speech. It's very beautiful. Look at it if you're interested. If you look at Russia now, it's Navalny. Obviously, everyone is totally gutted by the fact that he's died, and there is an investigation underway. It has to be fair, it has to be independent, and the body must be released, and an independent autopsy. But if you look at the history, the human rights movement in Russia has managed to survive the most extraordinary challenges. The oldest one, Memorial, has been shut down. The Sakharov Center, which even the Russian government used to pay for the building, that's been shut down. All the human rights organizations have been shut down. Websites, journalists imprisoned. I remember personally the killing of two of my friends, Anna Politkovskaya and also Natalia Estemirova, for her work documenting. You talked about Chechnya. So this is the story. Now, human rights defenders just try and implement the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and for that they are targeted. Over 400 are killed every year. And what breaks my heart is the long-term imprisonment of people. And we talk about Liu Xiaobo, but we also, Cao Shunli, who died in prison in China. She was removed to a hospital at the end, but she died, also a young woman. And you see, this is the point. The famous ones, the ones who have global attention, if they can't even be protected, like Liu Xiaobo, he was famous. The thing think of all the thousands. I have at the moment, 9 people in Tajikistan, 1 woman journalist, 20 years she got. In China, we know, I did a communication to the Chinese government on 15 who are serving from 10 years to life imprisonment. So all I'm saying is that, we have to be vigilant. You ask about strength and the strength, for human rights defenders, where they get their strength from. Looking around, mine is a global mandate, and I've been doing this work for 14 years. So looking around, I think it comes from their networks. They get their strength, first of all, from the networks, because they know they cannot rely on states. They also get their strength from civil society organizations who can help them with protection through digital security training, bars, CCTV bars around medical treatment after torture, legal assistance, all that kind of thing. And they build networks of trust. For example, in Yemen, a group of women managed to change a hostile population to one of support when they were looking for their disappeared, abducted brothers, husbands, sons, and family members. And now they are succeeding. And the same with children and young people. In Bangladesh, you talked about young people. In Bangladesh, there's a group of children, and what they have done is they are working with the local commissioner, and they have prevented dozens of child marriages. So it's about building trust, alliances, going to your network of human rights defenders, because they're the ones who understand, and they're the ones who will help you when you need help. I'm sure I've done my 3 minutes. I don't think it went off.
I'm sure there's much more we can learn from you, but again, out of respect for time, thank you very much for being brief, and we hope we can bring you in again. So, moving along, further down the table, Georgi Mzhavanetsa, I'm hoping I'm getting that name roughly right, is the CEO of something called the Shame Movement. Now, he was instrumental in organizing mass demonstrations in Georgia, which, as I understand it, led to electoral reform in some ways, and is very, very prominent in that respect. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me here and paying so much attention to Georgia. So, I come also from semi-authoritarian regime, and I would say it's a competitive authoritarian. Somehow our government managed to make a facade of the democracy and keep some democratic institutions in the country. We have elections, and the oppositional parties can compete and participate in elections, but the advantage of the government and the ruling party is so huge that there is no chance for the oppositional parties to succeed, because the electoral pre-election period also and the elections are mirrored in bribery and a lot of manipulations to the elections and so on. So, although we have some civil liberties in Georgia, but at the same time, if you are the target of the ruling party, then you have no access, for example, for rule of law. So that's how our government right now managed to keep the legitimacy internationally and also locally, and it's quite tricky to somehow succeed over this government. So I think it's a challenge also for the West, because we as the legitimacy which comes from the international community and the West towards our government makes their power even more powerful, and they get a lot of aid and financing, for example, and political support from the West. And in reality, we face some authoritarian regime in our country, and that's I think that's challenging. At the same time, we have seen some similar pattern, for example, with the Russia, right? Because before Ukraine war, we had the war in Georgia in 2008, and somehow right then Georgia tried to warn and cautioned the world what were the threats coming from Putin's regime, but we have not seen right then the radical actions from the West against Russia. Yeah, and then we became the war in Ukraine, first the annexion in 2014 and then in 2022, and that's the pattern when sometimes when the West is in how to say in a situationship with the authoritarian countries, then then the thing works out very not so well, and I think that the main discussion lies on that how can the West actually deal with these regimes who lean towards the authoritarianism. So yeah, I would say that the main goal should be to somehow cooperate and align with around the values and not the situations which comes up into international politics from time to time. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're also very pleased to have with us Taghi Rahmani, an Iranian journalist, writer, and nationalist religious activist. Thank you very much for being with us today. He's going to speak with the help of an interpreter, I believe, and that's perfectly well. So the floor is yours. Try to keep your remarks fairly brief, and if you can, feel free to remark on how you see Alexei Navalny and his legacy, if that resonates with you.
فکر میکنین که آقای ناوی چگونه یک شخص بودند و میشه که صحبت خودخور داشته باشین در چند دقیقه؟
من میخوام فکر کنم انگار تزار یکی از رایاش کش، انگار روسیه در قرن 19 زندگی میکنه. تزار
I think that it's like Tezar have killed one of his opponents. For me, that just looks like that.
ولی الان قرن 21 ولی باید ببینیم آیا غرب و جامعه مدنی میتواند جلوی تزار جدید آقای پوتین بگیره.
And this is the 21st century. We need to see that the West, is it possible for the West to be against this new Tezar of this century?
ما همه اینجا که نشستیم اوراسیا هستیم. برژینسکی گفت تا پایان قرن 21 اوراسیا منبع انرژی جهانه. آیا غرب انرژی رو حاضر با حقوق بشر برابر ببینه؟
We are the inherent of his goal. Is the West able to see us and this energy as it should?
ببینید مثلا رک بگم کشورهای غربی مسئلهشان انرژی و امنیته. در رابطه با دولت‌های ما ملاکشان حقوق بشر نیست و این باعث میشه که مبارزات ما در این کشورها زیاد مؤثر نباشه.
It seems that the West and their intention to our countries are the energies and such as fuels and not exactly human rights.
من 14 سال زندان کشیدم. همسر من برنده جایزه صلح نوبل الان در زندان اوینه و بسیاری از فعالان مدنی این کشورها، گرجستان، آذربایجان، اوکراین، همه فعالانشان در زندان یا تحت فشارن یا تحت جنگن. پس مبارزه ادامه داره. ولی آیا ما همه مردم دنیا به دنبال تحقق دموکراسی در همه جهان هستیم؟
I have been in the prison for 14 years. My wife, Narges Mohammadi, is in the prison. And everyone here, we had been to the prison or we had this experience. That means this resistance is continuing.
اگر 11 سپتامبر نمیخواهیم جامعه مدنی غرب باید به دولت‌های غربی فشار بیارن که در گفتگو بیان دولت‌ها حقوق بشر هم برابر با سندهای اقتصادی باشه. هنوز حقوق بشر یک سند بالادستی در رابطه بین دولت‌ها نیست و این مشکل بزرگی است که ما باهاش مواجه هستیم، ما فعالان سیاسی و مدنی در کشورهایی مثل ایران.
And if I could ask you to offer your final remarks at this point.
We think that human rights as a concept is not prominent among the Western countries, and when they gather together and when they have conferences, we want the human rights concept to be as equal as fuels and other energy concepts that are being discussed. We want the human rights concept to be discussed as much as they are.
خیلی کوتاه بگم، در ایران آزادی بیان وجود نداره. در ایران به زنان ظلم مضاعف می شود. در ایران شما نمیتوانی انتخابات آزاد داشته باشی، ولی مبارزه برای آزادی ادامه دارد. نرگس یکی از اوناست، ولی جامعه جهانی هم باید از این مبارزات حمایت کنه. من از شما متشکرم.
If I want to put it short, the situation in Iran, and if I want to describe that, there is no freedom of expression. There is no freedom for women, and they're not considered to be equal. These are the problems, but the resistance is continuing, and Narges Mohammadi is one of those people that are standing against these oppressions, and we have lots of others. We want the West and other countries to listen to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there and move on.
Thank you.
So, we have two more speakers, and we still have time for you, so don't think that we're going to compress you. David Istiv, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He's inserted in my program as the director of Welcome to Chechnya, but I don't think you're the director. That was David France, right? And you led rescue missions for the LGBTQ community in Chechnya that were documented in that film. So please, if you could reflect on give us an idea of what you're doing now, and what maybe a comment on Alexei Navalny's legacy and what it meant to you.
Вы вели спасательные операции в Чечне для ЛГБТ-персон, и могли бы вы немного рассказать об этом, о вашей нынешней деятельности, и если у вас есть комментарии насчет наследия Алексея Навального в том числе?
Ну, мы как работали, так и продолжаем работать. К сожалению, в России в этом плане ничего не изменилось. И с этого года ЛГБТ-сообщество России признано экстремистским.
Okay, so we're working as hard as we always did because the situation is not changing, and in fact in Russia the LGBT community has been considered extremist last year.
И Чечня, наверное, как раз тот регион России, на котором эта ситуация, которая в целом происходит в России, отсутствие права преследования инакомыслия, пытки людей, это тот регион, в котором все это уже давно отрепетировано и, по мнению российских властей, очень хорошо работает.
So Chechnya is the part of Russia where this persecution, including lack of freedom of speech, expression, even torture, is like not only the most prominent, but is well rehearsed and flourishing, if that could be the right word.
И, к сожалению, вынужден признать, что мы сейчас живем под лозунгом «Вся Россия, Чечня» сейчас становится. На мой взгляд, смерть Навального, она очень символична, но ожидаема. То есть у меня не было иллюзий, что он выйдет из России живым, потому что он даже погиб не в той России, в которую уже вернулся.
And while the death of Navalny is deeply saddening, fortunately it doesn't come as a surprise to some of us because I had no illusions that he would not get out of Russia alive, and Russia that he died now is not even the same Russia that he came into 2 years ago.
Мне кажется, российское правительство делало ставки, убивая его, на то, что оппозиция будет обезглавлена, общество потеряет некие символы свободы и станет беспомощным. Но мне кажется, как раз опираясь на опыт Чечни, сильная злость, она убирает страх. И если даже смотреть на нашу работу, то если в 2017 году сопротивлялись системе 2 человека, сегодня каждый день, каждый год этих людей становится больше. Общество от злости становится сильнее.
And I think the Russian government was counting on the fact that if they, let's say, behead the opposition and remove one of its most prominent symbols, they will crush hope. But they didn't account for the fact that anger is a fuel for action, and especially if you look at Chechnya, where only a few people were initially campaigning for human rights just a few years back, it grew into a much bigger movement, and fuel of anger and frustration is not something to be underestimated.
И сейчас, на мой взгляд, очень важно, как поведет себя оппозиция, которая находится не в России и которая имеет возможность говорить, в том числе и со своим российским обществом. Мне кажется, стоит учесть ошибки и отойти от каких-то популистских заявлений. Санкции не всегда рабочий инструмент. Кажется, надо перестать считать правительство России правительством и признать их преступниками и работать с ними как с преступниками в рамках международной юрисдикции.
And I think it's also worth noting how the Russian opposition that is currently based abroad is behaving, because sometimes they don't have the opportunity to stay in touch with their people, and I believe that we should encourage them to give up the populist methods, and that we should also be encouraging the non-recognition of the current Russian government and instead recognize them as criminals and treat them as such in all the relevant proceedings.
Thank you very much. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to ask each panelist, for this, we only have a couple of minutes left, if each of you could formulate in just a few words, 10 words or less, what message you would offer, not necessarily to dissidents, but human rights defenders, those who are standing up for human rights in countries that may be autocratic or authoritarian or semi-authoritarian, as we've heard. What would your message be as a form of inspiration? It can be something that you may have learned from Alexei Navalny's techniques, but just one word of encouragement, of inspiration to human rights defenders of the future. And we can begin. I see you leaning forward, Mary. Why don't you begin?
I didn't mean it like that. But this is a subject that really...
Again, very, very short, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking...
Very, very short. I did a report on successes of human rights defenders. Human rights defenders are fueled by their spirits and their hope, and they only need small victories to continue. So there are more people working in human rights now than ever before. You might not think it, but so for me, because I've seen it all over the world and I see it in my own work, there are successes. And if you continue to persist, to resist, and to go forward with the ideals, and greetings and honour to Narj and all the other brave women human rights defenders in Iran, and all the LGBTI defenders around the world who have suffered so much and yet continue. So it's resist, persist, go forward with hope, and keep your spirit alive. Thank you.
Resist, persist, go forward with hope, and keep your spirit alive. That's almost a poem. I mean, it sounds almost Irish. Okay. So here at this end, again, I would prefer if you could phrase it as an imperative. In other words, do this, don't do this. Just maybe 10 words or less, very briefly, if you could. Go ahead.
I would like to say, if we say about the future, our activity and about our problems, and I would like to draw attention to one very strange situation. I don't know, today they're all dictators, divided into parts, bad and good dictators. For example, What's the difference between Lukashenko and Ilham Aliyev? Ilham Aliyev is the president of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has the oil and gas, but in Belarus, no oil, no gas. That's why Lukashenko, he's officially dictator. No any problem with such, but Ilham Aliyev, welcome, no problems. Also, I remember about Putin says some first times that he's a Democrat, he's no Yeltsin. Only now, understand. Only now we say about Navalny. We don't must support.
Sorry?
We don't must support the dictators. It's not good for our activity because when we explain that dictator is a dictator, sometimes don't understand us.
Okay, so dictator is a dictator.
Yes.
That's a message for sure. Okay, then David or David, however you prefer. Sorry. Sorry. No. Got that wrong. Georgi.
Yeah. Okay. So facing the authoritarian regimes, they won't guarantee that you will succeed. But my experience is that we, for example, as our organization, we keep to resist for over 5 years. And one of the biggest experiences I got is that. You shouldn't seek for some shortcuts and never compromise for your principles, because we saw another movements which destroyed for some compromising, and that's I think one of the most important experience we had in our working.
Excellent. Don't compromise your principles. Clear statement there. Very good. Then Nathan.
There will be sorrow, despair, and defeat. Get a community behind you, seek help, take care of your health, physically and mentally, and no matter what terrible things have happened, those are not your fault.
Very good. Again, persistence. Okay, Taghi Ramani.
پیام شما برای فعالان حقوق بشر در کشورهای استبدادگرا چیه؟
فعال حقوق بشر، اولا حقوق بشر هنوز در جهان خیلی جوانه، یعنی حقوق بشر هنوز برای خیلی اصلا شناخته شده نیست.
Human rights concept is still quite juvenile and young in today's world.
برای دولت‌ها، حتی دولت‌های غربی، حقوق بشر هنوز یه امر تشریفاتی است. برای کشورهای ما، برای دولت‌های مثل ما اصلا حقوق بشر جرمه.
In the Western countries, human rights concept is still a ceremonial concept. And talking about our countries, the Eastern countries and Middle East, that's going to be a crime to defend the human rights.
یه مثال ساده بزنم. وقتی که جنگ غزه شد، رئیس سازمان ملل گفت نکشید مردمو. دولت‌های غربی خیلی دیر متوجه شدن. پس حقوق بشر هنوز خیلی راه داره برای رسیدن به جایی که باید بره. اینجا جامعه مدنی کشورهای غربی و کشورهای ما باید کمک کنن حقوق بشر بیاد بالا.
So, sorry if I may intervene. If it's a crime to defend human rights, what do you say to those people who are doing it anyway, or to continue to inspire them to? Again, really, what's your message to them?
Yeah, just one moment. About this concept that he just said, we just saw that human rights, how it's not respected in Gaza right now, and the whole international community is insisting on it and expressing it, and still there is no step taken on. So we do see how it's still young and this concept is not recognized prominently in these countries as well. اگر که دفاع از حقوق بشر همچنان یک جرم شمرده میشه، پیام شما برای کسایی که همچنان از حقوق بشر دفاع میکنند چیه؟
ببینید یه شعری در فارسی هست، میگه در ره منزل لیلی چه خطرهاست، ولی شرط اول قدم آن است که مجنون باشی. برای فعالیت آزادی و دموکراسی در کشورهای ما باید شما یه آرمان و انگیزه بلندی داشته باشید، چون هزینه زیادی داره. طالبان و جمهوری اسلامی اصلا حقوق بشر جرم مطلق میدونن و خیلی راحت میدونن بکشنش. پس فعال حقوق بشر باید انگیزه زیادی داشته باشه. به این خاطر ما به حمایت جامعه مدنی غرب نیاز داریم در امر حقوق بشر.
First of all, there was the great Persian poem, and I'm not able to translate that, but for all those who are fighting for human rights and freedom in our countries, we know that such a price we pay for that. So the most important thing is to follow our motivation and our motive and our dream and our goal, and we know what price we pay for that, but that's still our goal.
Persistence. Thank you very much. And final word to David.
Ну, я бы, наверное, попросил правозащитников прежде всего не брать вину на себя, если кого-то не удается спасти, потому что это противостояние огромной административной машине. И, ну и закончил, наверное, фраза Алексея Навального: «Я не боюсь, и ты не бойся».
I would urge all the human rights defenders all over the world to not put the blame on themselves if they fail to save someone, because it's the work of a massive administrative machine. And I would like to finish in Navalny's words: I'm not afraid, so don't you be afraid either.
We do have one more intervention because I overlooked Leila Yunus here, who's going to give us a one-sentence final thought.
Thank you. We're old and we're ill after prison, but we continue to struggle because Ilham Aliyev, horrible dictator, and our aim on this forum, that on the documents on the forum will be right. Ilham Aliyev, horrible dictator.
Thank you very much. We're going to leave it there. I just want to thank our guests for doing your very best to try to compress everything into such a short period of time. I would love to have individual conversations with each of you at some point, while you're here in Berlin perhaps, or in the future. But I would like to just offer one final thought regarding Alexei Navalny, since this is partly a commemoration to him. I was just reading an article, because there are tons of articles right now, this statement from The Economist: Navalny's great strength was to understand Mr. Putin's fear of other people's courage. And we've heard a lot about courage up here today, and persistence, and I'm sure that the memory of Alexei Navalny will continue to live in this panel and the people that they inspire. So just a warm round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. And thank you to the World Forum and Cinema for Peace for having us all.